Hey everybody, I'm back, and here we go with the TT-02B build series. And if this is your first RC kit, that's terrific. I'm sure you'll really love this hobby. Or if this is your first Tamiya kit, you made a great choice. Tamiya kits are well organized and very high quality. So let's get started. All right, step one calls for us to charge the battery. That's not an issue for me. I will have a battery ready when we're done. But if you do have one of those older trickle chargers, it does take a few hours. So that's why they ask you to start charging first. And if you were at the hobby shop and they suggested you get bearings, real bearings, instead of just using the bushings that came with the kit, that's great. If not, not a big deal. These will not last as long as real bearings will, but if that's all you got, that's all you got. All right, so everything we need for step 2 here is in this bag right here, the Spur gear. Which is this right here. Looks like that. There's quite a few gears here. I want to help you identify them. This one is part of the diff, so it's not that one. All right, so that's that gear right there, and E2 right here, which is part of the propeller shaft, is in this bag along with the propeller shaft. They call this kind of the center axle, the propeller shaft. So it's going to be these two for the front and back of this Spur gear. Right, we need to start by finding this Tamiya grease that was in the A bag. And there's also a small pin right there. I don't know if you can see that. That was also in the A bag. And we're going to be putting it in 3 spots on the shaft and on the bearing and on the end of that gear. So I put some here already. And I'm going to use a bearing. And then we're going to take this piece. Going to have to put some here. And also on the outside of the face of this. So go ahead. Then I'm going to drop this pin in there. And this pin, change the light here a little bit, should index into that gear. There's a notch there that we need to get it to sit in. See, okay, there it is. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so we're going to put some more gear in. First, we're going to put in the Spur gear. And the bearing next. And finally, this gear. All right. Okay. And we're done with this first part. This part right here. All right, now we're going to build the back end of the shaft, propeller shaft, and I'm going to start by putting 2 bearings onto the shaft first. All right, and then the bevel gear right here. Got it. 1 bearing is going to be here. 1 bearing is going to be right around there. And you'll see that index onto the chassis in a little bit here. And then we're going to assemble the entire propeller shaft like this. And we're going to get ready to drop this into the chassis. All right, and here's the chassis. You can see there the 2 sides are different. This is the back of the car and this is the front. You can tell there's a little slot here for the spare gear, and the motor is going to sit right there, and then the front and rear diff. So it's oriented with the shaft like this. I'm going to drop it in. Notice there's a notch here, and that's for this bearing right there. And there, you can see those 2 bearings sits into that little notch, and make sure the 2 front bearings does the same thing. And if we did it correctly, everything's going to spin smoothly. Looking good. All right, now we're going to set the propeller shaft down, and before I close this up, I'm just going to drop a little bit more grease in here and there, and it's actually calling for grease onto the bevel pinion gear, which we're going to build the diffs in the next step. And so I'll do the front and back. I'm not going to grease the spur gear just yet, because this is going to be exposed for a little while, and I don't want to rub against it and get grease all over me. So here we go. Going to put that there. And the screws that you're looking for looks like this. It's more on the silver side, and it has bigger threads than the other screws. All right, one of the good things about Tamiya kits is you don't have to buy any special tools. Their screws on these entry-level kits are just your regular Phillips head screws and not the hex heads. So you don't have to go out and buy yourself a set of drivers just yet. I'm going to strip those. Probably should have a screwdriver handy, but that's that. Let's move on and build the diffs. So for the diff, we need to find the sun gear, the diff body. I'm using this gunsmithing block to set the diff on. It's a lot easier to build on. And we need to cut everything off of this tree right here. All right, we're going to start off by building this. And if you look at the instructions here, you need to find this little tub of anti-wear grease that was in one of the bags earlier. And it's this silvery kind of grease. And we're pretty much going to put it on everything, so don't be shy about it. Okay, we need to put some grease on the individual gears, but I'm going to wait until I drop this in first. So we're going to drop this smaller bevel gear in there, and it is asking for grease on top of the gear. I remember some of the kits, it actually asked for grease on the bottom as well. So I'm going to do that. Even though it doesn't say on this one, I'm going to just put some grease down here. And drop that gear in there. Now I'm going to drop the whole diff in there. Then I will put grease on all the small gears. This is probably one of the hardest part of the build. Once you get over this, everything else is going to be pretty simple. All right. Okay, now we're going to drop the top gear. On there. And next is the large sun gear. Okay. And that's it. And now we're going to screw those down. All right, to put on the diff screws, you are going to need a smaller head Phillips screwdriver. And this kit from ORIA I got on Amazon. I will try to find the link and I'll put in the description. So in case you want to get one for yourself, it's a complete set. It's been great. And so we're just going to all right, I finished putting the gear together, and make sure the screw heads are flush along with the sun gear here. I don't know if you can see that. You don't want it to be protruding or anything, not screwed all the way down. If one is not screwed down and the other ones are, it may spin lopsided. This diff is going to spin very quickly inside the car, so you want to make sure that this is built correctly. So now I need to build another one before we drop them into the chassis. Okay, I'm done building the second one and getting ready to drop it into the chassis here. So it's asking for us to grease this up. We're back to this grease right here. And we need 2 bearings, one on each side. And also put grease on the face of the gear here. We're getting ready to close the front diff. So now's the time to grease this up. And some on the bearing. And all we're going to do is drop this in. Now this you have to pay attention to. It fits both ways, so you need to make sure you follow the manual here and drop it in this direction. All right, let's go ahead and cover it up. All right, now we're done with step 6 and the front diff is assembled. Let's see what's the next step. All right, obviously the next step is to drop the diff for the back of the car and close it up. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to grease it up, put the bearings on, and then drop it in there. Okay, starting to get exciting now. We're going to install the motor. Normally, I like to test all my electronics with the battery, with the radio, servo, ESC, test everything together before we mount it in. But I know these motors are very reliable. I've built this kit several times already, and I know everything will be fine. So take the motor, take this motor plate, which is this cardboard piece of paper here, and we're going to set that onto the motor with the holes aligned. And we're going to grab this motor mount, and there's 2 of them in the kit, and they go by the pinion gear, how many tooth there are. If you look at the diagram here, it's asking for this particular motor mount, and we're going to be using the side facing out where it says 16, 17, 18, 19. The other side is for larger pinion gears if you install a 21, 22, 23 tooth pinion gear, but I'm going to stick with what's in the kit, which is a 17 tooth pinion gear, and going to put that on. And we have to watch for the 2 holes in this diagram right here. And it's that one. The screws are these darker black screws with the fine threads. And also on this side, I drop those in and tighten it up. All right, when you're done, it should look something like this. By the way, this motor mount is plastic that comes with the kit. This is one of the first parts that I would replace with the aluminum hop-up part. They'll make the motor mount a lot stronger, especially if you're going brushless. If you want to upgrade this car later on, you want to try a brushless motor, I recommend you definitely change this to the aluminum one. You also want to change the propeller shaft as well if you can. Parts are kind of hard to find right now with everything that's going on in the world, but if you're patient, you will find them. Just ask your local hobby shop to get them for you. Now we're going to set the pinion gear. So the motor stem here has a flat part, and you want to line that up with the hole in the pinion gear. And I don't know exactly where the location is going to be. This is always a tough part. All right. So it's asking us to put the pinion gear on with a 10 millimeter distance between the motor mount and the end of the pinion gear. So I'm going to just put this on there, and then I will adjust it once it's in the chassis with the motor so I can line it up. Okay. Here we go. And this is just going to drop in right here. You can see I was off. All right, once you're done, your pinion gear and the spur gear should line up. You want as much surface area between the pinion and the spur as possible, so you don't want the pinion to be a little bit further out than the spur or short of the spur. You want as much contact as possible. So there it is. Let's go ahead and close it up. All right, before you close it up, this is the time to put grease onto the pinion gear. Like I said, we skipped this a little bit earlier so I don't get this grease everywhere, but now's the time when we're about to close it up. And it's also in the diagram here calling for a little bit of the anti-wear grease onto this area right here where it's going to close. Want to create a seal. So now we're going to drop this in. It's this way. All right, and then we're going to close it up with 4 of these screws again. Okay, you only want to put 3 screws in right here, and right here. All right, there's 3 screws that go on the bottom as well, here, here, and there. This one is for the battery stay. So we need to put that on there. Get that piece, but let me go ahead and put these 2 down for the motor. And let me find the battery stay. Okay, the battery stays look like this. And we're just going to point them in here and there. Now we're going to put the screws underneath. Okay, that's it. We're done. We're done all the way up to step 9. Next step is to build the front and rear arms. So I'm going to stop right here for this video. We built the propeller shaft, the front and rear diff. We covered them up. We put the motor mount onto the chassis and we put on the battery stay. So I think I'm going to wrap it up right here and look for the next video where we'll build the next parts. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead so you'll be notified when I put the next video out. And drop this video a like if you don't mind and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.